Greg didn't like swimming lessons this summer, which is no surprise, he kind of hates everything. He tried hiding in the bathroom, but it was so cold he had to wrap himself in toilet paper to keep warm. He didn't think to use a swim towel? Come on, Greg, you're smarter than that.
Argo Font Book Review, Argo Font Book Review.
As the title indicates, Greg is having problems with his mean older brother, Rodrick. Whenever Roderick's supposed to drive Greg somewhere, he shows up late. Whenever they have to do the dishes together, Roderick hides in the bathroom until Greg is finished. I don't know why Roderick gets away with that trick. If it was me, I wouldn't do the dishes until Roderick returned. Or I would clean all the dishes but leave them out for Roderick to put away. Roderick's other trick to get out of cleaning is to fill bags less than halfway. That way you get twice as many bags for the same amount of work. It's the exact same trick that potato chip companies use. Don't think I haven't noticed they charge full price for half a bag of chips. Roderick gets Greg in trouble at school. The teachers who had Roderick purposely forced Greg to sit in the troublemaker spot. Greg was hoping to sit next to a smart kid so he could copy during tests. Later, Greg talks about how he wishes he had a fake eye so he could use it to cheat on tests. Greg probably should be placed in a seat where he can't cheat. Raleigh went to South America for the summer. Greg doesn't care because Rolly's annoying about it. Greg interrupts Rolly's story. When Rolly doesn't like being interrupted, Greg figures Rolly is a jerk who doesn't care what other people have to say. Talk about the pot calling the kettle black. Greg is just as rude to his French pen pal. Greg refuses to write in French. He insults the French boy for not knowing perfect English, and he makes jokes about how ugly the French boy is. Yikes! If Greg is always this mean, how does he have any friends? Roderick has a band called Loaded Diaper. Dad doesn't like the band because it attracts too many punk teenagers. Humorously, Dad gets rid of them by playing classical music. Roderick tricks Dad into doing all his homework by pretending he doesn't know how to type on a computer. He makes Dad type up all of his reports, only Dad completely rewrites them to get rid of the mistakes. Dad, you've got to stop enabling Roderick like that. Greg pranks a student named Shirag by pretending Shirag is invisible. The entire school gets in on the joke. When Mom finds out, she makes a big deal about telling the truth. Greg enjoys being honest for a while because it's an excuse for him to insult people directly to their faces. The school has a career day. Greg isn't sure why the school thinks he'll be a clerk. He wants to be a billionaire, so he doesn't have to work for a living. I think I said the same thing when I was his age. Then I realized I'd have to work in order to get $1 billion, and the whole plan fell apart. When Mom and Dad leave for the night, Roderick throws a wild teenager party. He locks Greg in the basement during the party, and he forces Greg to clean up afterwards. The parents eventually find out, and Roderick is grounded for a month. They forbid him from sleeping in his room all day long. Roderick gets around this rule by sleeping on the couch all day. Greg says Roderick sure won that battle, but why? Why do his parents let him get away with sleeping on the couch, when that clearly breaks the no sleeping all day rule? Roderick also gets around the you can't leave the house rule by having band practice at the house. That's more of a punishment for Dad than it is for Roderick. Again, why do the parents let Roderick do whatever he wants when he's supposed to be punished? They also let the younger brother Manny do whatever he wants. Manny doesn't get in trouble for breaking Greg's stuff or for tattletaling on Greg. Greg tries to stop Manny from tattletaling by using the pretend to leave forever trick. Manny doesn't fall for it. He steals Greg's candy and still tattletales on him. That trick worked on Greg when he was younger, which means Greg is more gullible than a 3-year-old. Greg thinks Raleigh has a cute babysitter, so he goes to Raleigh's house. Rolly has a new babysitter, a nerd named Leland. They play a Dungeons and Dragons style game, which is actually kind of cool. The game is ruined when Mom insists on playing with them. Greg is nervous when Mom forces him to play with Rodrick, but the game only lasts for 10 seconds because Rodrick kills their characters instantly. Similarly, Rodrick doesn't care when he gives Greg music lessons. Rodrick plays on his phone during the first lesson, then messes around on his drum set during the second lesson. He doesn't notice when Greg leaves. Greg puts off doing a history paper because he expects school to be canceled due to snow. When that doesn't happen, he scrambles to do the entire paper in one night. The computer accidentally deletes his report, so he is forced to buy Rodrick's old report for a huge amount of money. This backfires big time. Rodrick's paper is terrible. It looks like he did the whole thing in 1 minute. It gets an F. Greg's not self-aware enough to realize he acts a lot like Rodrick does. If given the chance, Greg would sell a useless paper to Raleigh, and if he got caught, Greg would figure the entire thing is Raleigh's fault for being stupid enough to fall for it. Rodrick has to do a science fair project. He uses it as an excuse to watch violent movies with his buddies. When his parents force him to do a real science project, he says he'll research astronauts. This is an excuse for him to sleep all day long. So what else is new? There's a talent show. Greg writes a skit where he and a cute girl make fun of Rolly. He's surprised when Rolly doesn't like it. For a while, it looks like Greg might have to be an assistant for a magician. He's relieved when that's not the case. Rodrick's band plays at the talent show. Mom's tape of the performance is bad because she talks the whole time. The school's tape is bad because it focuses on Mom's silly dancing. Rodrick blames Greg. He is so mad, he reveals Greg's biggest secret. One time at Grandpa's, Greg escaped Rodrick by hiding in the bathroom, only he went into the women's bathroom by mistake. Greg ended up being dragged out of the bathroom by security guards. By the time the story reaches the kids at school, it's all mixed up. Everyone thinks Greg snuck into the girls' locker room at the high school. The other kids are impressed and they call him the Stealthinator. Greg is briefly popular until the girls find out they all hate him, and he goes back to being an unpopular wimp. The end. Post-book follow-up. I think this book is better than the first one. It works to have half the book be about Rodrick. The book has several ongoing stories, which had multiple installments, that worked too. I also enjoyed some of the short, self-contained stories, like the dog poop story, Greg and Rodrick drawing mean pictures of each other, and how Grandma saved a mean note that Greg wrote to her when he was 6 and she wouldn't let him eat ice cream. I also loved the joke about the Encyclopedia Brown books. I have reviewed the Encyclopedia Brown series on this channel. You should check those reviews out. They're pretty good. As I said in my previous Wimpy Kid review, Greg is pretty self-centered and he can be a bully. That turns off some readers. Greg is more sympathetic in this book because he is the victim, while Rodrick's the antagonist. It's mostly Rodrick doing the bullying, not Greg. Greg is plenty bad by himself. It's clear that Greg tries to do as little schoolwork as possible, and he would bully Manny if he thought he could get away with it. He openly dislikes Raleigh, and will certainly stop being Raleigh's best friend if he ever gets someone new to hang out with. Great, now I made Greg seem like the villain. He kind of is. If I didn't find these books so funny, I would probably hate Greg because he's constantly complaining about everything. He insists that nothing is ever his fault. He's like a sarcastic YouTuber. Well, I enjoyed this book more than the first one, and I gave that one a perfect score. That means I give Diary of a Wimpy Kid #2, Rodrick Rules, a 10 out of 10.